So we are gathered for our Friday morning Torah study. You'll notice that it's set up a little differently. We're a little busier this morning, and that is because we have the great good fortune to have with us this Friday morning Rabbi Dan Aronson, direct from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, where he is busy directing Jewish learning. And, of course, one of the things that we rabbis love to do the most and are, in general, hired to do is teach Torah. So we are very, very lucky to be able to have him with us this morning, teaching our group who is so committed to coming every week to learn and engage with Torah. So let's begin with our usual Torah blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, God, Spirit of the universe, who makes us holy with your commandments and commands that we engage with words of Torah. To welcome Rabbi Aronson, let us also say Shechianu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shechianu v'kiyamanu v'yigianu lazman hazeh. We bless the source of life for giving us life, sustaining us in that life, that we could reach this exciting moment in time together. I give you Rabbi Dan Aronson.
You're not really going to be needing to use your chumashim this morning, because rather than focus directly on the parasha, we're going to focus on some minor holiday that's coming up that I'm sure, it's probably not even on your radar. But Pesach is coming up, and it's actually really amazing that there's so many people here today, and I'm sure you all have that usual anxiety before Pesach, or some of you do at least. So I'm glad that you're here. So years ago, I used to work for Hillel, and not so many years ago, I was the Dean of Admissions and Recruitment at the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College. And in both of those capacities, I would attend the Hillel Student Leaders Assembly, which was in some little camp. And, there would be 200-300 college students there. And the head of the education department for Hillel at the time was Rabbi Avi Weinstein. And he created kind of a way of looking at texts so that you would have a room full of these college students arguing with each other. And it was really quite fascinating. So I've always been kind of enamored with his approach, which is to take a text and present it like it's a page of Talmud, with a central text to study and other texts around the edge that sort of serve as commentary. So I would like to pass these out, and I'm pretty sure that there's enough for everyone here. So let me ask you first, what is your favorite part of the Passover Seder? When you think of the Haggadah and you're going through it. So it's not a question about what's your favorite part of Passover, but what's your favorite part of the Seder itself? Does anyone have a favorite part? Singing. The charoset.
Maror.
Maror. Really? Okay. Why maror?
I think the intensity of talking about slavery and oppression and suffering, and then we directly experience that. There's something about the drama for me of really tasting the hardship of our history it's intense.
It's very interesting. So someone said charoset, someone said maror. It's singing. The 4 questions. Why the 4 questions?
Because of the way that it brings in the next generation. And,
very nice.
None of the children in my family seem to know it.
Very good.
The one who goes to day school.
Yes, that becomes the early measure of the success of a religious school, whether the kids can do the 4 questions.
When the grandchildren were a bit younger, I think they ought to be common because it got their attention focused on what we were doing.
Right, which is part of the intention of the Afikomen.
The grandchildren doing the play based on the story.
Sure.
Instead of being a different character.
Right. Now, when I think we were growing up, certainly when I was growing up, we never knew from a play at the Seder, right? And now it's the thing to do. Yes.
Well, in that theme, in our family's Haggadah, we read from the Martin Luther King "I Have a Dream" speech. So
Uh-huh.
that's also sort of
Do you sing it? Yes.
Do you sing it?
We don't sing.
I like Diane. I like this whole notion of it would have been enough, and it's kind of the theme of the Jewish people. Bring it on, you can take it,
Right.
however much you have to give, more.
It would be nice if the Hebrew word for enough was not die, but whatever. You do hear stories of Israelis going to visit loved ones in the hospital and saying, like, die kvar, and people just don't get it. So,
That's right. Actually, my favorite part is the sentence, and therefore the idea, when we get to it, that every generation we're supposed to see ourselves as if we personally were freed from slavery.
okay.
Always opens up in wherever we are, a conversation about what are we enslaved to today and what do we need to be liberated from today. And some of that is always intensely personal.
Right.
Personal enslavement, and some of it is where we are happen to be in society, today.
To me, one of the most interesting words in rabbinic literature is the word ki'ilu, as if. And in rabbinical school, I always used to latch on to those kinds of relationships. We do something ki'ilu, as if, and then try to figure out, what does that mean? Oh, two more. Yes.
There's something about the preparation for the Seder that is very exciting because in our family, my husband and I used to take parts from different Haggadahs and, paste things together and insert things. And now our kids are doing that.
Oh, nice.
And that's really so gratifying to see
Right.
that they do that.
Right. Last.
Opening the door and letting Elijah in.
Okay.
Brings it through a mystical quality.
And have you ever set someone up to come in at that point as
And
Elijah?
close the door behind them.
Yes. And wipe your feet. Elijah, come in and wipe your feet. So the other question that I want to ask is, what pieces of the Seder or the Haggadah are you not so comfortable with? Maybe that you don't like or that make you feel uneasy?
Well, the killing of the Egyptian
Okay.
firstborn, so,
Right. The plagues.
right.
Right. I'm not one of these people that loves the idea of plague bags. A lot of people do. It's a great way to engage children, but it's really problematic. I mean, the reason we spill the wine is to lessen our joy over the hardship of the Egyptians. So yeah, that's problematic. Who else has something that makes them a little uncomfortable? Yes.
There's often these little stories in there that the rabbis were talking and they went, oh, it's time for the morning prayer. I mean, there's always these little pieces that are meaningless, and what is this doing in here?
Right. So they were largely excised from Kaplan's Haggadah, right?
As were the plagues.
As the plagues were too?
The original version, which my family has used for a gazillion years, the original reconstruction.
Oh, very nice.
There's no plagues in it.
Really?
So we had to add the plagues.
Yeah. And no Rabbi Jose either, right?
And no, there was a rabbi.
There was Rabbi Jose?
No plagues. Joseph.
Yeah. Any other things that make people feel uncomfortable? Yes.
Yeah, for Coleman.
Why does that make you feel uncomfortable?
Well, you have all the children involved, and only one gets the afikomen.
Ah.
So what we did, I made afikomen for each of the kids with their name, and I hid them in different places, and the older kids helped the younger ones find their afikomen, and they all came out winners instead of being sad about it. It should be a happy occasion.
So everyone had to find his or her own afikomen.
Right, but it created a better atmosphere because it's for the children as well as the adults.
That's nice. Highly adaptive. And because it has the child's name on it, they can't argue who does what. The longest Seder I was ever at was at the home of Jacob Neusner, who was one of my teachers as an undergrad. And that night there were a couple of undergrads at his house and some grad students, and we couldn't find the afikomen. Like all of these, you know.
Give it to a 6-year-old, they can find it.
Present company accepted all these brilliant people in the room. We couldn't find the afikomen, and there wasn't a 6-year-old in the room. But someone had the idea of tipping the couch upside down. And it was a sleeper sofa, and the afikomen had fallen back, so we literally had to move the furniture to find the afikomen. That was a very long night. Yes.
When I was a kid, our Seders, my uncles who had been born in Ukraine, we'd all sit down and they would mumble in Hebrew for about 2 hours. And while I liked the feeling of it, it kind of got boring as a kid, and I couldn't relate to it at all. So I would say a part of the Seder that is not accessible to the people who are there
Right.
would be a negative.
Yeah. Very good. And was there another comment? Yes.
I was just going to say that at our Seder last year, my nephew found the afikomen from the year before.
Very good. I want to know how much he charges to do house cleaning. So, who here is the youngest in their family? I'm the youngest. Okay. Did you love Pesach? Did you love the Seder? Were you the focus of attention for so many years? Was that great? Yeah. Okay. Middle children, older children. Who are you? Yeah. So how was it for you? For one night, you had to be in our shadow, the youngest. Was it okay? You still in therapy for it? Okay. Well, that's good. So I used to love being the youngest, and I did all of the singing. And my uncle's father was from Hungary, and he would sit at the end of the table, and I would do the 4 questions, and he'd always end with, "The chazan, the chazan." I always wanted to be a chazan, but I never had the technical skills to be able to pull it off. So the piece of the Haggadah that makes me squirm the most is the text that you have in front of you in the middle of the page. Halachma anya di achalu avatana be'arar d'Mitzrayim. So this is the bread of affliction, which our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. Okay, so that is all fine. Kol dichvin yetei ve'achol, kol ditzrich yetei ve'yifsach. Let all who are hungry come and eat. Let all who are in need come and celebrate Passover. That's where I start to squirm. Today we are here, next year in the land of Israel. Today we are slaves, next year we will be free. Not even ki'ilu. It's not even this year we are like slaves, next year we'll be free. This year we are slaves. So what is it about let all who are hungry come and eat, let all who are in need come and celebrate Passover? What is it about that makes me squirm? Does this make anyone else squirm?
The thought of someone being hungry.
The thought of someone being hungry. Okay.
And that you're not really asking them to come.
You're not?
No, because you've got your whole family there, and you didn't invite all who are hungry.
Okay.
Not everybody wants to celebrate Passover. They want to eat.
Aha. Okay, so even the people who are there aren't necessarily there about this.
No, I'm talking about those in need or those,
And those
who are
in need,
hungry may
yeah.
not be interested in Passover. They
Right.
might just be interested in being fed.
Oh, that's interesting.
They may not be Jewish.
They might not be Jewish. Okay. Well, would that be such a bad thing if they came in and said, we don't really care about the Passover part, but may have some more brisket?
It's not that it's terrible, it's just why can't they just say come and celebrate with us?
Right. Okay. Very good. Yes.
Well, why just for Passover, like you can come and eat and celebrate for Passover, but then we'll see you again next year. And if they're hungry and they're in need, do they really want to celebrate? Or
Okay.
do they just-
These are all the kinds of things that make me squirm. One of the reasons this makes me squirm is the word all. Let all who are hungry come and eat. So, there was never enough room at our dining table for all the hungry of the world to come in and eat. So, how dare we say something that we clearly cannot accommodate? How dare we say these words, let all who are hungry come and eat? Why do we say them? What is behind this? So the text that I have around the margins, I think, helps shed some light on this. Back again when I was a rabbinical student, Rabbi Steve Sager from North Carolina came and did a workshop with us, a 2-day workshop on mezuzah. If you can imagine, like a 6 or 8 hour workshop on mezuzah. Like, how are you possibly going to get enough chomer, enough material to keep us interested? It was the most fascinating 2 days.
What does that mean?
The mezuzah. So mezuzah is the parchment. Mezuzah. By the way, halach ma'anya, the words that I just read are Aramaic. They're not Hebrew. And mezuzah is the Hebrew, and mezuzah is more the Yiddishized version of that. And it's like the Yiddishized the vernacular that you have in your head. So that's what you're attuned to listening to. And for those people, the hungry and the poor, they would have understood halach ma'anya, but if you had put it in Hebrew, they wouldn't have necessarily had a clue. So it's specifically in language that people can understand. So as part of this class on the mezuzah, he brought forth a text that I've been looking for years, and I finally came upon it. It is a commentary on a verse from this week's parasha, Parashat Tzav. And the line in the parasha is Ve'et kol ha'ida hakhel el petach ohel mo'ed. Assemble the whole community at the entrance of the tent of meeting. So the context of this is it's the installation ceremony for Aaron the high priest and his sons. So this is like his big day. And how does this chain of tradition start? It starts with Moses basically giving them a blessing. And so Moses assembles the whole community at the entrance of the tent of meeting. So how many people do you think are in the whole community?
A lot.
A lot.
600,000 maybe?
At least 600,000 adult men. So that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. fitting in a space that's about 2 inches by 2. So if you look on the back, there's a diagram of the Ohel Moed. And there was a rule that said, I put a little dashed line here that goes right between the altar for burnt offering, which was outside of the Holy of Holies that we associate with Yom Kippur, where the Kohen would sacrifice to God in private. But the first half of the Ohel Moed was off limits because lay people were not allowed to go past this altar of the burnt offering. So really you're looking at a space that, in my estimation, is 2,812.5 square feet. Okay, so that's not going to accommodate 600,000 people or more. So the question is, first of all, why were they all assembled? And second of all, just as we say, what do you mean all who are hungry come and eat? What is the Torah saying that Moses said to all the congregation, come and meet in this small space? Like, no more could we accommodate all the hungry in the world at our dining room tables than Moses could accommodate all of the people of Israel in this small space. So first, the reason for assembling the community was so that they would not think that Moses is on a power trip, and so he's installing his brother. It doesn't look very good. This is not going to play well on the evening news. So by having this presence in the tent of meeting, the people will see that this was ordained by God, and Moses is just doing God's bidding. So, whether that was the convinced people or not, who knows? So, the more pressing idea is, how did these people fit into this space? So Rashi, our 11th century commentator from France, says this is one of the places in the Torah where a small area miraculously contains something much larger than itself. It contains something much larger than itself. This particular insight comes from, there are two midrashim, two commentaries on the Torah. One is on the book of Genesis, and one is on the book of Leviticus. And they both deal, the particular comment deals with how to get a lot in a little space. For the book of Genesis, the problem was God takes all of the waters on the earth, gathers them up into one place, and then creates dry land. So they said, usually when you take a full vessel of water and you want to create space in that vessel, you empty it out into an empty vessel. But he said, but this is a case of taking the water and pouring it into a vessel that's already full. Like everything was water. So where could God have put it? So they say, it was a miracle. Now, I don't expect anyone to be able to read this, but on the back of it, the back of the sheet again, is the particular commentary in full on this particular pasuk, this particular verse, assemble the whole community at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Let me read some excerpts for you. Rabbi Elazar said, all of Israel was 60 myriads, a myriad being 1,000 men, so 600,000 men, or 10,000 men. And you say, at the opening of the tent of meeting? I love whoever did this, put in the punctuation. Rather, this is one of the places where a little held a lot. Similarly, God gathered waters from under the heavens into one place. In human practice, a man empties a full vessel into an empty one. Does he ever empty a full vessel into a full vessel? Now the world was full of water everywhere, yet you say, unto one place? This is one of the places where a little held a lot. Similarly, and Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock. So you remember Israel was fetching, as they often did. They were thirsty. They wanted water. So they gathered them in front of the rock so he could witness the miracle of the water coming out of the rock. Well, apparently this rock was not very big. So how could you get all these people around it? Now, Rabbi Hannah said it was but the size of the opening of a small sieve, yet all Israel stood there. Rather, this is one of the places where a little held a lot. Finally, and in the holy temple too, they stood pressed together. Yet when they prostrated themselves, they had ample room. Rabbi Samuel ben Rav Yonah said, each had 4 cubits, a cubit on each side, so that none should even hear his neighbor's prayer. And in the future, too, it shall be thus. So we have this sort of long list of ways in which a little space held a lot. How could we take that particular understanding of a little holding a lot and apply that to this central text of halach ma'anya, of let all who are hungry come and eat? How could you make the connection? I made it in my head. What are the mental gymnastics that you would do?
I don't think it was I don't think the concept is to one Seder table, but to go to all the Seder tables.
So it's a collective voice.
Maybe that wouldn't be enough. I don't know what the numbers are.
Very interesting. So just as on the High Holy Days we speak in plural, like we connect ourselves to the community speaking with one voice, so to hear, it's not one person's voice, it's the voice of the Jewish people inviting people in. So if we put all of our tables together, maybe there would be room. I hadn't considered that. I like that a lot. Yes?
I think it's just aspirational. It's a statement of intention rather than, no one's going to have everybody at their table, but it means that our intention is that we would include the entire community, just like standing before the tent of meeting. If it were possible, they would have everybody there. It's not possible, but it's a statement that everyone in the community is included in this event.
Mm-hmm.
So even though you can't physically have everyone there, it's an expression of this would be our intent to include everybody. So here this isn't a holiday where we're being insular. This is a holiday in which we're thinking about everybody who's in need and that we would feed them if we could, and that would be our aspiration.
So look at the bottom right corner. If someone can read that. Could you read that text? This is from Kaplan's, the new Haggadah.
This is the bread of affliction. Let it remind us of our fellow men who are today poor and hungry. Would that they could come and eat with us. Would that all who are in need could partake of this Pesach feast. Let us here resolve to strive unceasingly for that blessed day when all will share equally in the joy of Pesach, when poverty will be no more, when Eretz Yisrael will be upbuilt, and when all mankind will enjoy freedom, justice, and peace.
So does that reflect what you're saying? I have to say that I was a little surprised by this particular take on it. And my surprise stems from how inactive it is. There's no doing. It's purely aspirational. Like, would that they could eat with us. And it's interesting. I looked at the Night of Questions, and I looked at a more contemporary version of the new Haggadah, and the English changes. It's actually more literal. This is actually the translation in the text. It's not let all who are hungry come and eat. It's would that they. So, that really emphasizes it because his interpretation of the Hebrew itself is would that they could come, but not like let us feed them.
I would, in looking at this, think that we're talking about, we're referencing Pesach because people gather to eat and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it goes beyond that, and that Pesach, but this intention of Pesach should spread out throughout all time as opposed to just this one particular time.
So it's something that repeats over and over and over again,
Well,
right? It
and
doesn't
that's
stop.
When we will all share equally in the joy of Pesach, it doesn't mean in the moment of Pesach necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
but the joy that it can make others who are in need feel that at some time they will be able
To experience
feel that
freedom
joy,
and
experience the
right.
joy, whether it's at a Passover Seder or another time when they may be hungry.
Right. Our joy should never just be contained to the one moment, but we take this moment to appreciate what we have. Right, just to think about it. Someone and who hasn't spoken.
Well, I was going to say that we've talked about this in other Torah study classes about the need to take, and I know what you're saying about this text not being as active, but the need to take, say something about the impossible by, something can become possible only when speaking that it is impossible, as in the parting of the Red Sea and other stories, and the stand that one takes by saying, let all who are hungry come and eat. That just the statement itself is aspirational, but it's also taking, a stand that that's what's got to be in all of our worlds, and that it would be far less powerful to say, let 10 people come and eat. That the statement of possibility is that which then may create or has the power to create, at least in people's minds and ultimately in people, in the world, something that is impossible by nature. So to me, it doesn't bother me at all that it's not, that it's such a big statement.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make it less so for me. It makes it more so, because where are people saying that anywhere else?
Right.
In our homes on Passover. To me, that's a huge,
Another text that I could have put in here is from the morning service where we say Baruch She'amar, blessed is the one who spoke and the world came into being. Just the act of speaking makes things possible. Yes.
This is also tefillah. I mean, that this is in a sense prayer, and one of the functions of prayer is self-education and self-assertion of values. And so that it's aspirational, I wouldn't say merely aspirational. I think that's an extremely important part of it. In our family Seder, a great deal of what goes on is a question of inculcating in the children values. And it's not, and that becomes the precursor to action.
Right.
But I do think the values and telling ourselves about values and what is important to us and stating what's important to us, as you said, out loud is a very, very important thing. And while it's not a substitute for action, is nevertheless very important in terms of creating action.
Right. So the rabbi said, study is more important than doing because it leads to doing. It's you can't have one without the other. So another take on this verse, assemble the whole community at the entrance of the tent of meeting, comes from Ibn Ezra, a Spanish commentator whose years you see here, 1089 to 1164, who says, well, it wasn't really the whole community. It was the elders and the heads of the tribes. Sort of a representational system. So it's incumbent upon these representatives to speak or witness on behalf of all of the people. Does that help us understand at all? Let all who are hungry come and eat? No.
The elders can't eat for the hungry.
tribe leaders can't do it either.
Very good. Okay.
You know, if I hadn't seen the commentary and just looking at the phrases for the first time, which is probably the case, I would think it has nothing to do with food. And I would read it, let all those,
Which verse are you talking about? Oh, okay. Right, yeah.
All those people that want freedom, celebrate, come, and all those who need freedom come and celebrate the notion of becoming free through Passover. And then it kind of supports it. It says, today we are here, today we are slaves, but at some point they're not slaves. At some point in time, they're not a slave. At the point they cross the Red Sea, just before they cross the Red Sea. I mean, you don't. It's being a slave or not a slave is not. It's not a function of physical location, right? So they could be free and still be in Egypt at that just before they cross the Red Sea.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're talking about just the whole notion of. I mean, this is how. I mean, without reading the commentary, just to me, it doesn't seem to have. It doesn't really have anything to do with food.
Interesting. Okay. Yes.
So much of our Torah study here, there's a lot of literal stuff, and there's plenty of interpretation stuff. And I'm just wondering, you were saying, like, it's very offensive to let all who are hungry. Couldn't it just be, instead of literal, that you take it kind of at face value for what so much of our study is, and that is like, it's like we were just talking about, you can't look at God face to face. When you're going by, you have to turn around.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot which one that was we were studying about, but yeah, shielded.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's it's not literal. So much of it is the opposite of literal. I'd look at that and just say, it's beautiful, actually. And I don't worry. The concept's beautiful. I don't worry that I can't fit all the people around my table, because that would be literally. I'm looking at this more figuratively and more and on a more broad scale of what it really, what its interpretation is.
Right. So I think it is the interpretation before which I quake. Because my own experience is that this is speaking to me, and it's telling me to do something. And I'm trying to figure out what it is that it's trying to tell me, and if I can do it. I mean, this is, these are our ancestors speaking to us, calling us to do something that, I might not be able to do. How can I do this? I mean, it's really, really humbling. So even if I don't take it literally, I am forced to figure out how I want to interpret this. And then if it's a call to action, what's the action I'm being called to, and am I up to it?
Okay, so for me, the call of action is to just, everybody partakes in this, and it means, you know what? Try to have someone who's less fortunate than you at your Seder. Try to take someone who's having a tough time, who maybe's lost their job. I mean, in today's world,
Mm-hmm.
and invite them.
Okay.
And let them realize that you have a place,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have to go hungry. And if everybody does that, then I think that's what they're speaking to.
So do me a favor. On the lower left-hand corner, there's a passage from Elie Wiesel's Haggadah. Could you read that?
Sure. A memory from my town, Siget. Our Seder table, hold on. Our Seder table was never without a stranger. I remember that we went from our one synagogue to the other, from one house of study to the other, looking for a stranger without whom our holiday would be incomplete. And this was true of most Jews in my town. and probably of most Jews in other towns. On Passover Eve, the poor, the uprooted, the unhappy were the most sought after, the most beloved guests. It was for them and with them that we recited, "This year we are still slaves. Next year may we all be..."
Lower left-hand corner.
"May we all be free. Without comforting our impoverished guests, our riches would shame us." And so we were grateful to him. In some towns before Passover, Jews would raise funds discreetly. One by one, they would enter a room in the community house. There they would find a dish filled with money. Those who had money left had left some. Those who needed money took some. No one knew how much was given or how much was taken. Thus the needy were taken care of with dignity. Yeah, I mean, that I guess is what I'm saying, and I would say, can't we be happy with that?
Can we? What do people think?
No, not enough. No, lovely, but I mean, it actually strikes me that this vision of going around looking for somebody is the most selfish thing. It was to make them feel better, that not to be shamed by how much they had. It wasn't because they really wanted to help this person the way he writes it. But I'm drawn to that quaking feeling you have. I'm drawn to the top left, which is, it's not incumbent on you to complete the work, but neither are you at liberty to desist from it. So in community, especially, it is too daunting to try to do something like that on your own. A lot of people, I mean, some individuals can, but here as a synagogue community, we do work to help alleviate hunger. It's not everybody's hunger, but it's this one once a month, that place once a month. We're trying to do more. We're beginning to do even more as a synagogue to alleviate hunger in specific ways. So to me, it doesn't. The passage in the middle doesn't bother me, not because I can have somebody and feed them for one night at my Seder table, even though that is a nice thing to do, but because it's not, it is aspirational and it's inspirational and it's a commandment, like do something. We're here and you're not going to maybe have that person tonight, maybe you didn't find somebody from the corner, but tomorrow you better get back to work to try to make this real.
Okay. Yes.
I read this and it's a call to action. I mean, it says to me, it's why Tikkun Olam is so important. As Reconstructionists, Reuben taught me, Bernstein taught me, goodness is in each of us. I'm not going to go to South Central LA and look for homeless to come to my table. But, we support Mazone, we support charitable causes, we support our congregation and its outreach. It's just at the core of Judaism as I perceive it and feel it. And I think it is that call to action, and on a worldwide stage. And I think it's a wonderful, clarion call.
Yes.
When you say that you're uncomfortable with it, and that you're not sure if you can do enough, it just brings up for me the idea that when we save one soul, ki ilu, we're saving the world.
Right.
And I
That's the top left.
And that this, it was so much metaphor in the Torah when we talk about let us feed those who are hungry on Passover. We're really talking about all the time trying to help people, whether it's soup kitchens or whatever, and whether it's Jews or not Jews, or that it's a Jewish value to care about people. And one of the basic ways we can is to feed them whenever we can.
Why can't it be both?
It can be both.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see that. I think both are perfectly beautiful and perfectly Jewish.
I'm getting the call. I forgot I hadn't silenced it. So it can be both, yes.
Well, and maybe it's not really even about food, it's the bread of affliction. And if you're sitting there and, I think we tend to, think that we have it so bad or we have all these problems, and maybe if you're reading this and you're sitting at a table and you have enough to eat,
Mm-hmm. Okay. One of the things the rabbis do with the word anya is it's related to the Hebrew word for answers. So it's like this is the bread of answers. So through this ceremony that we have, we're looking for the answers to the ills in the world. And so that becomes a prompt. Yes?
You know, one thing this discussion makes me realize is, you asked the question of what's uncomfortable about the Seder. I think what's uncomfortable about the Seder is the tendency to go through it by rote. So it's like, this is making me realize, how many times have we read this sentence and you just blah, 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 and you just keep on going, and you don't stop and say exactly what we're doing here.
Right.
I mean, it's just, especially several years back, we had a very large family Seder, and it was just, there was like no discussion. It was just go straight through the book. And I'm sure that, the impact of those words are lessened when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But then the flip side, what Bert was saying about teaching the next generation, I still think that possibly even just saying the words, if you grow up and you hear these words every single year,
mm-hmm.
on some level you're understanding that that's the ethics of my people.
Mm-hmm.
So, so it's kind of a tug for me. Like, on the one hand, it makes me feel bad that it's rote and we don't think about it. But on the other hand, the repetitiveness of the Seder,
right.
I think, still has a value in teaching.
Right. And you could say the same of prayer. Like we pray the same words over and over and over again. But if you don't say them over and over and over again, there's no opportunity for the words and the meaning to sink in. And every now and then, like on the Passover Seder, you do have like an aha moment. But you're comfortable with the words, and every now and then something will be going on in your life, and it'll cause you to stop and say, oh, that's what that prayer means. Yes?
I just think it's a beautiful reminder of both kind of the individual and the collective all wrapped into one. So, on one hand, we're thinking about what we're personally enslaved to, but on the other hand, we're all in it together. In the same way, on Yom Kippur, we all atone, you're atoning for your individual sins, but the words are we're atoning as a group.
Right.
For everybody, and we're all in it. That, the we are slaves, and next year we will be free, speaks to kind of all of us together. And I find the reason Reconstructionism speaks to me so much is because of that kind of collective sense, and it's the individual obligation, yet the obligation to the community, and it's consistent with all of that.
Right. Yes.
I guess my question is, why is a little discomfort such a bad thing?
That's so Jewish.
He likes
I mean, I understand in principle why it's uncomfortable to deal with
Mm-hmm.
the scope of what's being said, but do we really have to rationalize everything to make ourselves feel better and say that it's aspirational? It's okay that it's a wake-up call that we have 365 days a year, and we're not happy about it. That's
Right.
not the worst thing.
I mean, Judaism, so much of Judaism is to make us uncomfortable, but to give us these opportunities to pause and reflect. So when I say I'm uncomfortable or it makes me squirm, I say that non-judgmentally. Like, I need to squirm.
I say that as a Jew.
I say that as a Jew. We all need to squirm. One thing that comes to mind, I had mentioned On Being with Krista Tippett. Has anyone listened to that? Okay. So her guest a week or two ago was Father Greg Boyle, who is in L.A., and he's actually a friend of my wife's. So at her wedding, her first wedding, like 20-something years ago, he did a part in the wedding, and I did a part in the wedding, but I can't remember him. But he is like a person who's like is really taking this stuff very, very literally. And I wonder how this conversation would be different when you have a person like that who's actually like living there, doing this work. I think it would be incredibly powerful. Yes.
Just one thought, like, Rabbi Rubin, you were saying at your Seder, you go around and say, like, what is keeping you enslaved today, sort of thing, right? Well, at our women's Passover celebration that we just had, our table went around and spoke about what our rebirth is. So you kind of have the yin with the yang, and that is, I think, a great way to look at Passover, because can you imagine if you went around and you asked people, okay, what are they enslaved in today?
Mm-hmm.
And you'd have sort of a glum, probably like you'd have the nanas going, oh, you know, like feeling sad or whatever, and then what's your rebirth?
Right.
And so it's like it can make you squirm,
Right.
and it can make you happy the holiday.
Right, right. And you could look at this and say, there's a lot of ways that I can feed the hungry. The Mazon quote here, I'm not sure, I found this online. This was probably a fundraiser, a direct mail fundraiser at some point, but I couldn't find the year, that these words are a pledge, and the pledge is a privilege. And that's what I hear you saying. The other side of sort of the obligation is, wow, I have the opportunity to really do this. That's pretty amazing. So the quote is, surrounded by the hungry and the homeless, we can redeem the pledge. This evening, so that the hungry may eat, we contribute to Mazon, a Jewish response to hunger, and we say together, blessed is our God, through whose goodness we have been brought to the privilege of sharing our bread. So Mazon, is a small thing that we can do that has larger ripples, sort of going to the idea of the rabbis, whoever preserves a single soul is as if they complete the whole world. I think that also goes back to this Ibn Ezra quote that in the Ohel Moed, it was just the elders and the heads of the tribes. It didn't need to be everyone. It needed to be representatives of them, and through the representatives, they were all present. So too, with doing a small act that contributes to something much larger, it is if we are doing our part. And that's all that we can expect, is that we would all do our part, even though we can't tackle the whole problem. Not everyone could fit in the Ohel Moed, but we could do our part to make sure that everyone was somehow represented in there. I want to go to the last commentary from the JPS commentary, which many of you, I think, have in front of you. The designation Petach Ohel Moed should not be taken literally. So we figured that one out. But to go to the end, and according to the JPS commentary, what they envision happening is as many people as could possibly fit in that small space were there. Everyone else was outside, watching on a jumbotron. But to me, this goes back to the idea that, everyone doesn't have to be at our table. There are lots of tables that they can be at. It's like we have it in our power, we know, to eradicate hunger in the world. All of the science shows that we could actually do it if people would, some people would get out of the way and let the wealth be shared. So, in fact, everyone could fit in that space if we just expand the space and have satellites all over. So we all have a role to play, and there really is a way that we can feed the hungry, but it requires all of us working together. So that's a pretty hefty message. And I know that we need to wrap up. So I hope that you will take this sheet, and I have some extras if you'd like, and share them with your friends and your family and strangers who may be visiting you at your Passover Seder.
They don't fit.
And let us remember that really it is in our hands to feed the hungry, and we all need to find our way to do that.